Know what's funny? When couples tell me they want a better sex life, what they're usually imagining is more sex, or at least that might be what they're imagining their partner wants. More frequency, more consistency, less awkwardness. But what actually happens is it's not just that you start having more sex, it's that your whole relationship to sex shifts. And the changes are often more subtle, but more powerful than people expect. So, today, what I want you to walk you through is what actually happens when couples start doing this work. Not the Instagram version, not the everything is fixed overnight version, but the real human shifts and the smaller moments that actually carry the most punch that you're probably not even considering. Because if you've been wondering, would this even make a difference for us joining the Naked Fun Comeback, working with me, then this is your answer. And before I dive in, just a reminder that doors to the Naked Fun Comeback June cohort will be opening very soon. Make sure that you watch my email for the details. And remember that podcast listeners get a special discount. The best place to find out all the details on the Naked Fun Comeback is to join my free workshop. I'm running a series of them through the month of May. You can sign up at the link in the show notes. You will get all the juicy details there. And I hope to see you there. So, what are the shifts that happen? Shift number one is that you start talking about sex without it being a blow up. One of the first things that changes is being able to have conversations about sex that don't create shutdown. And I'm thinking specifically about one of my couples, Aaron and Dave. And they told me about this night where they listened to the module about relationship to pleasure in the course. And they got into the tub and they started talking. And Aaron was sharing how normally this conversation would lead to defensiveness on both sides and both of them shutting down. And instead, they had a really juicy, really deep, really connected, really enjoyable conversation where they actually learned something new about sex, about each other. And these kinds of moments are the moments where we open the door to creating the kind of sex life that we want. When we're stuck in the cycle of talking about the same thing over and over and over without having any new ideas, or with everybody feeling blamed and like they're not enough and like they're broken, we don't get anywhere there. When we're able to have frameworks, questions, and processes for listening to each other effectively, hearing and seeing each other, and talking about this in a less personal way, then we stop avoiding conversations and we start having them. And that is really the first key to getting the sex that we want when we're in such a different stage of life than we were in the beginning of our relationship. Stage number two is that you start understanding your body instead of fighting it. Now, for many people, especially men coming to this process or higher libido partners, you don't feel like you're in a battle with your body, okay? You are ready to go pretty much anytime. You're not worried about things not working. It feels like this is a partner problem. At the same time, I will argue that there are higher libido partners that I talk to who, because of the cycle of rejection and shutdown that they've been in, because they're now at a place where they maybe doubt whether their partner's enjoying themselves, they're doubting their skills, so they lose that confidence. This can turn into getting in your head and losing your erection. This can turn into getting your head and not being able to orgasm or finish. And it's also really common for higher libido partners or penis owners to get to a place where they come very quickly, because if sex is only happening like once every 6 weeks or even less frequently than that, the amount of sensitivity that happens is really high and we lose control. So sometimes penis owners and people with higher libidos are fighting their body in a different way than lower libido partners who literally straight up have no fucking clue where their desire has gone. They could blame it on a million things. And I talk about in some of my webinars how we can play find the root whack-a-mole. And once we figure out one thing, like, oh, my testosterone is low, then another thing will happen. So yes, root cause can be important. And yes, physical understanding your hormone panel and all those things are a part of the puzzle. We also want to get out of a place of fighting with our body. There's this UVU place that this whole coaching process started for me when I realized that fighting with my body. I was like, what the F is wrong with you, body? Why aren't you showing up? Why are you making this so complicated? Like that inner voice, me v me, was not supportive. It was not the way I would talk to a best friend. It is not the way I would support someone who is having a struggle. And so when you start doing this work and you start finally having a framework for noticing what turns you on and what turns you off, for naming those things, then we can start to build a manual for your sex life that actually, an example of this would be my client, Amy, who realized through this process of regularly debriefing with her partner that basically weeks 1 and 2 of her cycle during the follicular and ovulatory were clutch times. But as soon as she flicked the switch over ovulation, that luteal stage became a disaster. Her body was more sensitive. It had a harder time getting turned on and responding, and it just turned into conflict. And so as a second step in the process, it's not their end destination. They got into a habit and a ritual of making hay during the first 2 weeks so that there was less pressure to make things work in the luteal when it's just harder to make it work. So instead of trying to push through what doesn't work, they're leaning into what does. And what that means is more good experiences instead of more forced experiences, less cringe, less obligation, less why did we even bother trying tonight? And then your body starts to trust that you're going to show up for it, that you're going to work with it, that you have got its back. And when we create this breadcrumb trail of positive experiences, we rewire the nervous system to believe that sex can be fun, easy, and relaxing. Shift number 3 is that you get surprise nights again. This is one of my favorite because it's the thing that I think a lot of people feel like they've lost forever. Those nights where it just happens, right? And we do start in a more scheduled place because when we're working in the naked fun, I want you to think of this as training wheels on, right? So we want to create a lot of scaffolding, a lot of structure around what we're doing and how we're doing it so that nervous systems can relax. But once we learn that system, then we get to step into the more spontaneous windows. And a lot of what this looks like is having a date night that's pressure free, where we're showing up to whatever activity Sophia has designed. There are 16 date nights. You open the laptop, you do and next thing you know, you've been naked and playing for 2 hours in a way that you haven't in a very long time. Or you're participating in the Safe Simmer Challenge, and next thing you know, you had a make out in the shower and just left it at that for the first time in forever. And it felt so good for both of you. Okay. So when we have structure, we actually get the tools to get that spontaneity back, to know how to take advantage of the spontaneous moments and not freeze in the awkwardness of, oh my God, I want it, but now what do I do? This is the power of doing this work in a step-by-step where you're not stabbing in the dark trying to put together random Instagram tips, but you have somebody carrying, in particular, the lower libido partner's body through this process of safely, step by step, creating a new association to sex so that we rewire our relationship to sex. We don't just have more of it. Okay, what else can you expect? Sometimes it's about the light bulb that clicks for good. Have you ever had one of those moments? I'll share one of mine where you're a teenager, and lots of people never heard this, but I certainly heard at some point, whether it was books I was reading or whatever. I remember hearing a lot of, you need to masturbate so that you can know your body, so that you can be able to explain your body to another person. And of course, surprise, surprise, I would argue I was a pretty late self-explorer, and I didn't do a lot of it. I didn't have any kind of like framework or pathway to exploring beyond just trying a few random things. And it wasn't until I started going through my sex coaching certification and going through this process for myself in earnest that the light bulb went off. And I was like, oh, when you actually explore your own body, then you know how to translate it for a partner, right? So Nicole had a very similar moment in the program around this idea of relationship to pleasure, which is something we talk about a lot, okay? And she said, I always knew that pleasure mattered, like on an intellectual level, but In this process, she started to realize that her pleasure is not extra. It's not a bonus. It's not an add on. It is fundamental to her existence as a human, as a mom, as a partner. She shows up better as a mom, as a partner, as a wife, as a human when she allows herself to rollerblade, which she loves without feeling guilty about. Or when she goes to sex and she realizes she can be in a mode where she is enjoying just for herself. And she doesn't have to cycle in her mind about whether her partner's enjoying himself or whether her partner's having a good time. She gets to just enjoy for her sake. And guess what? Her partner's having a great time because she's having a great time. So this might seem like a small shift, but it compounds over time as we're doing these date nights and these deeper realizations start to sink in, and they help us to show up differently, not only in our sex life, but in all parts of our relationships, including our parenting ones. The last piece here really is that the resentment starts to fade, okay? And this is huge, of course, especially for the higher desire partner. Steve, in particular, I'm thinking of, used to share that he was angry a lot of time, right? Sometimes very out loud and sometimes under the surface because sex felt like something that he had to fight for or go without. It was always him initiating, always him bringing it up, but it always had to be done on her terms. And that meant that there was this climate of resentment and frustration happening on the day to day, which meant it was harder to get in the bedroom because she would feel that heaviness and feel that demand, even if he tried so hard not to express it. When we get into a habit of playful and pressure-free connection, then we get to a place where it's just easier to be around each other again. The climate in their relationship in between date nights is more positive. He is less angry, less frustrated, less resentful, and the quality of their connection time is higher. And I hear from so many dads in the program and higher libido partners that the connection dates that they have, even if they don't ultimately lead to penis and vagina or intercourse, are more connecting, more bucket filling, make them feel more loved than a night of a shitty quickie where they're really not sure if their partner had a good time. So all of this is the type of shifts, the types of examples that you can expect from doing the work of deciding that you don't want the status quo in your relationship anymore. You want to love each other. You want to have fun together. You want to have fun naked together because this is the person that you signed up to do that with. You don't want to be fighting about sex. You don't want to be having the same conversation about sex and not getting anywhere. And if that is you, if any of this is resonating, and if you are a fuck yes to any of this, then your next step is to join me for my free workshop. I've got a couple of dates and times happening over the month of May. Check the link in the show notes. Cart will be open for the Naked Fun Comeback June cohort starting May 18th. The best place to join is on the free workshop. I will have a special discount for my podcast besties. And if you can't join, send me a DM on Instagram, find me in the emails. Let's find out if this is the best place for you to change your marriage. I want you to have a summer that you look back on 5 years from now and go, yeah, that was the best thing we ever did for our relationship. Thank you for being here, as always, my friends, and I will see you next week.